In our last video, we took a look at a really common EIGRP issue, and that was we're not forming a neighborship between a couple of EIGRP speaking routers. Another common EIGRP issue we might run into is routing. We're not getting the routes into our EIGRP table as expected. And let's talk about a couple of common reasons that that might happen. It could be automatic summarization that EIGRP can do. Now, this is an IP version 4 concept because we don't have the concept of classful networks with IP version 6. But with IP version 4, in order to cut down on the number of individual route advertisements that need to be sent out, what EIGRP can do is take all of the subnets of a classful network, and instead of advertising those subnets individually, EIGRP can advertise a summary route. It can advertise the classful network instead of all of those individual subnets. And if we have discontiguous subnets, in other words, I've got one subnet off of one router and another subnet off of another router, and those two subnets, they belong to the same classful network, that could lead to an issue. That could prevent us from getting to one of those subnets. We could go off in the other direction. Again, that's an IP version 4 only issue. Something else that could happen is maybe we're filtering routes. And there's a great feature built into EIGRP that lets us do this. We can configure a prefix list, and then using the distribute list command, we can apply that prefix list to filter out specific routes from being advertised by or learned by EIGRP on a specific interface. That's something we talked about in quite a bit of detail in the Route Complete video course, but it can lead to problems if we're filtering inappropriate routes. Let's go out to a live interface and troubleshoot a couple of issues where we're not getting the routes we expect. I'm sitting on router R3 in this topology on screen, and I've noticed an issue. I don't seem to be able to get to the loopback interface of router R1. I've told all of my loopback interfaces, at least I thought I did, I told them to participate in EIGRP, but if I try to do a ping to 10.1.1.1, it fails. And let's troubleshoot and see if we can figure out why it's failing. I know that I've got good neighborships formed between all of my routers. This configuration is the same configuration that we left off with at the end of our last video, but now, even though I've established my neighborships, I'm not able to get everywhere. If I do a show IP route, do I know about how to get to that network? I know about getting to 10.3.3.3 and 10.4.4.4. Yeah, a couple are missing here. I don't see how to get to 10.2.2.2 or 10.1.1.1. Well, let's go to R1. Let's just verify that that interface, that loopback interface, is really participating in EIGRP. Let's do a show IP protocols, and let's see if we are. It says we're routing for 10.1.1.1/32. But I'm seeing something else. That's a bit of a concern here. Something that might explain this issue we're having. You might want to pause the video and look at this output and see if you can spot something which might prevent us from getting to this loopback IP address from R3. Did you notice this? Did you notice that automatic summarization is enabled? The auto-summary command must be given under the EIGRP configuration. Let's take a look. Let's do a show run pipe to section router EIGRP. Yeah, you see this command right there, auto-summary. Instead of advertising a subnet of 10.0.0.0/8, I'm summarizing it, and I'm advertising the classful network. The challenge is, all of the other routers in the topology, they've got an interface, they've got their loopback interface. It belongs to the 10.0.0.0/8 network. I mean, it's a subnet of that, but everybody knows about the 10 network. I've got a discontiguous set of subnets for this one network. Let's turn off auto summary everywhere and see if that helps. On R1, I'll say router EIGRP1, no auto-summary. Let's do the same thing on router R2. We'll go into router EIGRP1, no auto summary. Next, let's go to R3. And we'll say router EIGRP 1, no auto summary. One more router to go. Router EIGRP1, no auto summary. Now let's go back to router R3 and see if things are better now. Let's do a show IP route. Oh, look at this. Now I do see these individual subnets. We didn't see this a moment ago, but because I've turned off auto summarization, I now see these individual subnets of the 10 dot network. Can I ping it? Can I ping 10.1.1.1? We were not able to do this just a moment ago, but now we can. Fantastic. That's a look at how the auto summary feature might impact IP version 4 routes. Let's consider IP version 6. You'll notice that I've got some IP version 6 addresses assigned, and I've got IP version 6 routing set up. I'm doing EIGRP 4 IP version 6. But if I do a show IPv6 route, something's missing here. Do you notice, looking at the topology, do you notice that I seem to be missing the 2001:/64 network? That's the network hanging off of Fast Ethernet 0/0 on router R1. Let's go to router R1 and just verify that that interface is participating in EIGRP for IP version 6. Let's do a show IPv6 EIGRP interfaces command. It is. If I do a show IPv6 protocols, we see that that interface is participating. In fact, both of my Fast Ethernet interfaces are participating. Why do you think it's not working? Well, the show IPv6 protocols command doesn't give us quite as much information as the show IP protocols command. Let me show you. Show IP protocols, if we're dealing with IP version 4, it talks about any incoming or outgoing filtering that we might be doing. We don't see that with IP version 6, but based on the symptoms, we may be filtering routes. Are we? Well, let's take a look. Let's do a show run pipe to section router EIGRP on router R1. Let's look for the distribute list command that might be filtering outgoing routes. I don't see anything on R1, so let's go to the next top router. Let's go to router R2, and let's do a show run pipe to section router EIGRP. And look at this. I do have a distribute list applied there. Let's get rid of that. Let's see if that fixes our problem. Now in the real world, you would want to see exactly what is that prefix list that's being referenced. Is that appropriate? Do I want to filter that route? But in this case, I know that I don't want to filter any routes, so I'm going to get rid of that. I'll say IPv6, router EIGRP 100, and I'll negate this command just to make sure I can copy and make sure I type it correctly. I'll copy and paste it. I'll say no. And just to speed things up, I'll do a clear IPv6 route star. Now, let's go back over to router R3 and see if we now know about the 2001:/64 network. And we do. Look at that. That network is now showing up in the IP routing table. That's a look at a couple of reasons why we might have EIGRP issues when it comes to learning routes. With IP version 4, maybe we're doing the auto summary command that's causing issues. Or maybe with both IP version 4 and IP version 6, it's possible that we're doing some route filtering. Now in our next video, we're going to take a look at a newer way of doing EIGRP configuration. It's called named EIGRP. And with named EIGRP, we can go into one hierarchical configuration mode and configure everything for both IP version 4 and IP version 6. And even though we can use some of the same show commands we've been using here in this video and the prior video, there are some new commands I want you to know about. We'll see you back for that video in just a moment.